I spend a lot of time wondering what the future of automotive performance is going to look like, and honestly, I don't have an answer. Because electric vehicles are quick, sure, but performance is about more than short bursts of straight line speed. But that's exactly why I think this performance edition version of the Mustang Mach-E GT is a pretty good indication of the direction the industry is headed, and for at least a couple different reasons. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Look, this thing is kind of the antithesis of conventional performance, or at the very least, it is exactly what so many people seem to be put off by. You've got a Mustang badge on a crossover and it's electric. Shame on Ford, right? Well, unless you're more optimistic like I am, and you're actually kind of excited about what it means. Now, yes, I agree with all of you out there. Certain things we're going to lose suck. No more manual transmissions. Yeah, that's going to be a bummer when that day comes. Both of my cars are manual, and I love them. I bought them for that reason. So I'm a bit disappointed to see that go away whenever that day comes. But I'm also excited about the potential of electric vehicles, and it goes beyond straight line speed because yes, EVs are quick. We all know that. It doesn't matter whether it's a performance one or not. All that instant torque means as soon as you need speed, they're just gonna get up and go. That's the reality of these things. It's also what's cool about them. But what I like about this Mustang Mach-E GT Performance Edition, aside from the fact that it's a bit of a mouthful to say, the cool thing about it is there are some appreciable handling benefits here that go beyond the low center of gravity that's created by this battery pack. And let's also talk about the fact that yes, it's expensive, but before you get on me, I tell you guys every time I review EVs, EV technology is expensive. So what do you expect? You're gonna have to pay for it. Automakers aren't gonna do you a favor and cover the cost of it until it gets a little bit cheaper. No, you're gonna have to pay to play. That's very much the case here. But then the other thing you gotta ask yourself is, how much would you pay for a gas-powered performance vehicle that makes almost 500 horsepower, more than 600 pound-feet of torque, and can do the sprint to 100 kilometers an hour in less than 4 seconds? And I'm not here to compare this thing to the Nissan GT-R, but I think it is a very good baseline because that thing, yeah, it's a little bit quicker to 100, but it costs something like 130 grand to start. So there is some food for thought. So suddenly the 90 grand or so that Ford wants for this Mach-E GT in Canada doesn't seem so bad, does it? Right? Yeah. Now, let's take a look at it in the context of other Mach-Es. Those are a lot more like traditional EVs. Yes, it is quick, but it really is about efficiency first, whereas this one, purely performance. Now, no, the transformation isn't as drastic as, say, Ford Focus to Focus RS, but you can really feel the improvements that have been made, not necessarily out here on a straight road like this one, but once you get into something a little more windy, or if you are on an on-ramp or an off-ramp, yeah, you're really going to notice what has gone into this. It starts with Pirelli P0 tires. Yeah, you can buy those for any vehicle, but it's great that they're here. The other thing is it has adaptive dampers. So it takes that quickness of an EV and it turns this thing into, honestly, one of the stickiest vehicles I have ever driven. That's the only way I can describe it. I just can't believe the way it holds the road. Now, the weight of the battery pack definitely cuts through those extras, but it actually works really well with them. It makes it feel so planted, and it's one of those vehicles that you can just add speed through corners. It's usually not something you are going to do, right? You're gonna start to add speed as you exit the corner. After that apex, you're gonna get on the throttle, just nice and casually. With this thing, you can actually get on the gas as you're cornering. Not that I would recommend it, but just to show how impressive the road handling is, you can do that, and it just goes forever. If you ever wanted to know about the importance of extending the limits of adhesion, drive this thing. and also drive it back to back with just about any other electric vehicle this side of something like a Porsche Taycan, and you are going to see what the difference makes with sticky tires, good suspension, working with that heavy battery pack, that low center of gravity. This thing is just so incredible to drive. It's more impressive than I thought it was going to be. I was looking forward to it, but I didn't really think it was going to be that special. I thought it was just going to be kind of a regular Mach-E, a little bit quicker. That was about it. But it really does live up to that Mustang GT name. Now, not every one of them has been a banger, but if any Mustang, yes, this is a Mustang, if any one of them needed to be a hit, I would say this is it. And I would also say that Ford has succeeded in its mission. So now let's talk about that quickness. This thing, it's claimed to do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.7 seconds, which is plenty quick, whether you're talking about electric or gas vehicles. I don't care. Once you get below that 4-second mark, they all feel kind of the same. It only gets a little bit more ridiculous, but so much is happening in that 3.7 seconds that you aren't really going to notice. Yeah, bragging rights, but really the bragging rights here are that if you take a look at the Porsche Taycan 4S, so yes, the entry-level Taycan, but it's still a Taycan. That thing costs at least 30 grand more than this, and it does the same sprint in 4 seconds, so a third of a second slower. If that matters to you, which I think it might, it's definitely worth considering because it is something to hang your hat on. That to me is a big part of these EVs, especially performance ones like this one. But you know, I like the fact that you're getting all that performance, and again, it's fairly affordable. But the other thing I really like about driving this is it really is that ultimate Jekyll and Hyde act. Because in a gas vehicle, you don't really get that. Yeah, with a Mustang, you can get that active exhaust where you can put it in quiet mode so you won't upset your neighbors, but you can always feel that sense of urgency. It's like Jumanji, you know? It's just constantly in the background. You can hear it beating. It makes you want to get your foot into it all the time. But with an electric vehicle, because you don't hear anything, if you want to cruise around casually, you can do that. And there's going to be no egging you on, no encouragement to get a little too enthusiastic. But if you want to, which I would highly recommend, dive into this infotainment menu, pick the unbridled setting, which again is a terrible name. First of all, the sound that's being pumped into the cabin is super cool. It sounds like a gas-powered spaceship is the only way that I can describe it. But this thing morphs into an absolute monster. It is just so tight. The steering firms up. That's been a big complaint of mine with the Mach-E, is that the steering is too light. But with that unbridled setting, it really does come alive a little bit. Gives you a little bit more weight and resistance. And on a winding road like this one we're on, it is just so nice, so engaging. We're coming up to a fairly wide corner here, but I can just toss into it and I can feel everything that's happening. It reminds me of driving a gas-powered performance vehicle. It really does. Yeah, there's a little bit more weight. You can feel it down low. Like I said, that battery pack does cut through a bit, but this is a proper performance vehicle. It's not a fake. It's not pretending to be something it isn't. It's everything that Ford wanted it to be. It's everything you're going to want it to be. It is super cool to drive. But again, I like that duality because I can reach back over here, put it back in whisper mode, and now I am cruising around fairly efficiently. This thing doesn't have the best rating. I think combined consumption is something like 25.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And don't forget, with electric vehicles, the calculation is the same as a gas-powered one. So instead of liters per 100 kilometers, this thing gives you the total how many kilowatt hours you're going to consume for every 100 kilometers you drive. This thing has a 91 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is the big one, the biggest you can get with the Mach-E. Now, range, not as good as some of you might hope for. And personally, I'm okay with it. I think Ford says it's good for 418 kilometers. Though I gotta say, this one is new, so I'm willing to chalk this up to the fact that it's barely been broken in, but I haven't seen anything above about 370 kilometers of range. And I don't put too much stock in range because what you can actually do, that's the ultimate test. But this is at least a bit of an indicator. And right now, I have 84% battery and only 309 kilometers of range showing. So I do wish it would be just a little better, or at least a little closer to what Ford claims, because that is kind of low. Now, it's still better than something like the Porsche Taycan, but something tells me that at least a few of you out there who are considering something like this as a daily driver, that is going to be a bit of a problem. But what's not are these winding roads. And this is what it's all about. Like, this thing is insane. I can't get over how much fun it is. I don't know if I've had this much fun in a vehicle on the road before in my life. No joke. Not even driving it like a maniac. Even at maybe 6 or 7/10, this thing is an absolute riot. So now that I'm driving this thing a little bit more like a Nissan Leaf, we can talk about the way it is to live with, starting with this cabin. And I said it last time I reviewed the Mach-E, that was the premium. The build quality is fantastic, and that really matters in an electric vehicle because you're going to hear creaks and squeaks way more than you would in a gas-powered vehicle with that mechanical white noise in the background. But here, there is barely any sounds outside of some of the equipment we have in here with us. Driving around this week, I just can't get over it. Driving around with the radio off. Obviously, that's what I do when I'm talking to you guys, so I can hear everything. And I've had some cars where it becomes really problematic. Stuff I didn't notice earlier in the week really stands out, but here, there's nothing. The other thing I really like, these seats. Super comfortable, and vegans rejoice. This is an animal-free interior. This suede, as well as the leather, yeah, it's synthetic. But I'm telling you right now, it looks and feels like the real stuff. It's really great. A few features are missing though. So this one has heated front seats and a heated steering wheel, but no ventilated front seats. Okay, fine. No heated rear seats either. And don't forget, some compact crossovers out there, you can get that stuff. Even in the Kia Seltos, subcompact, 35 grand, you get ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, heated steering wheel, heated front seats, everything. So the fact that in a vehicle that's about 90 grand before tax, you lose out on a few of those features disappoints me a little bit. I also don't love how stripped down this cabin is. And I know some of you tech files out there are gonna say you love it, but to me, a few more physical controls would come in handy. This is a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot going on with this screen, but unlike the last test, at least it all works properly. Clearly it's been updated, no glitches, no overlays, no weird graphics. It works really well, it's smooth. Wireless Apple CarPlay works really well too. And the other thing I like, the smartphone app. There's a companion app and that works really well too. I can even use my phone as a key, which is one of those really cool gimmicky features that is a selling point in an electric vehicle like this one. Now, some stuff that does come standard, a full advanced safety suite, adaptive cruise control that works in stop and go traffic, lane keep assist, blind spot monitoring, forward collision warning, just about everything you could ask for. Front and rear parking sensors too, rain sensing wipers, automatic high beams, literally the works. The only stuff that's gonna cost you more, there's a $2,500 package that gets you a self-parking system that works in parallel and perpendicular spots. Kind of cool, kind of gimmicky, but it also has Ford's BlueCruise system. That is a hands-free adaptive cruise control. It combines that lane keeping with adaptive cruise, and it means out on the highway, you can drive with no hands on the wheel, which is a bit of an adjustment, and it only works on divided highways in certain stretches. It's something like, I don't know, 250,000 kilometers of highways throughout North America have been mapped to this point. But I've been using it this week and it's really cool, though I have to say, not quite as good as GM Super Cruise because those lane changes fully automated, either on their own or you can just tap the signal and it'll switch lanes on its own. This one does not have that Bit of a disappointment, but otherwise it works really well, even with all the construction on the highways in the GTA, which those of you who live around here know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to hit you guys with a bold opinion and say I think the Mach-E is stunning. I'm even going to take it a step further and say that I think all these Mustang-inspired design elements, they look better here than they do on both the coupe and convertible. Sorry, not sorry. This thing is amazing to look at. And then the GT, it amps up the aggression just enough. So you get something that actually looks like a grille, the light up badge, a little hokey, but I'm fine with it. This splitter, super cool. And so is that wheel design, although you're going to have your work cut out for you keeping them clean. And then this grabber blue paint, I think it is perfect. But something not so perfect, and you guys know I always talk about how automakers like to reinvent one simple thing that we use every day with their EVs. Well, this Mach-E is no exception. Just take a look. These push-button door releases, I really worry about them in the long run, not to mention in the deep cold of winter. But here's some kudos for Ford. Something that it does that Hyundai, Kia, Lexus, Toyota, Subaru, none of them could do. Give you a rear wiper. It's been raining quite a bit this week, and I've really come to appreciate having it, especially after I just reviewed the EV6. I know it might seem simple, but that to me is huge. Something to keep on your list if you're shopping for an electric vehicle is that everyday functionality. So I know we already went over range, but something else that matters, whether this is a performance EV or not, relatively slow charging times. Now, officially, I think this thing maxes out at 150 kilowatts, but it's like I always say, when you're talking about those charging times and speeds, that's ideal. So the current state of charge when you hook up, temperature outside, all of that stuff, it's going to impact how much energy you can draw. So 150 kilowatts, not bad, but others that are a little bit newer, but about the same age as this thing, they can draw more power. And even the time it takes, Ford says this thing can go from 10 to 80% in about 45 minutes, which seems fairly accurate from my experience. But if you take a look at the Hyundai Ioniq 5 or the Kia EV6, just to name a couple, they can do that same jump, that same 70% in only about 18 minutes, so less than half the time. And that is very significant. But then again, neither of those are performance EVs like this one. And speaking of performance, something else to consider is the Tesla Model Y Performance. That thing has a little bit more range than this, does the 0 to 100 km/h sprint in the same 3.7 seconds. I don't know what the performance is like outside of that speed, but I'd have to imagine that this thing is going to be just a little better to drive. And the other thing to keep in mind is that is going to cost you over 100 grand once you add the driver aids that this one has. So it's something else to keep in mind. But the other thing to keep in mind is that unbridled mode that you can just have so much fun with. And that to me is what this thing is all about. To recap, I like that the performance of this Mach-E extends beyond straight line speed, the styling, and the integration of technology. I don't like the slow max charging, the few features it's missing, or the relatively high consumption rates. I still don't think we're at a place with electrification where a single vehicle could be all things to all people. So if range is a priority for you, then other Mach-E models are going to be the way to go. But then none of them delivers this kind of performance. And come to think of it, not many other EVs in general do, especially not for this price. Forget going quick in a straight line. This Ford is at its best when the tarmac gets twisty, and that, my friends, is what performance is all about.